trades coming from the west called it Zai Tun, or erythrina, after the flame-colored trees that abound here. Over centuries, this port has flourished and declined, and flourished again. Then the gateway to the China trade. Now, a bustling port just across the strait from Taiwan. It has always been a place where merchants met, where goods changed hands and money was made. But cultures also met here and were exchanged, leaving the city one of the most diverse in China. This is Quanzhou, the city of learning. In the year 1299, the Venetian Marco Polo noted a port city in his account of his travels, where the erythrina trees decorated the streets. These trees were called qitong in Chinese, and the city became known in the West as Zai Tun. Back then, before the bay silted up, ships could reach the city's shore, and thousands of them plied these waters. This was the eastern terminus of the maritime Silk Road, the main ancient trade route to and from China. Rubbing shoulders with the Chinese were merchants from West Asia, Africa, and Europe. They bartered goods and became familiar with each other's cultures and beliefs. Some of these beliefs stuck. Today, Quanzhou's nearly 9 million people are served by over 6,000 places of worship, honoring over 500 gods. Religious events are a part of life here. Captain Cai Mingjun has come to a temple overlooking the harbor at Xiangyu village on Quanzhou Bay. The god he is praying to is Qi Wangye, a protective god worshipped across southern Fujian. Captain Cai is praying for the safety of the 20 crew members aboard his fishing vessel, and also for a good catch. His prayers are understandable. Going to sea has always been a risky activity. According to the records, at least 2,000 wrecks lie under these waters. There are many boats in Xiangyu Harbor. It's not for nothing that this is known as China's first fishing village. Almost everyone here is engaged in the fishing industry. Captain Cai and his crew are making ready to go to sea for the first time this season. He'll be looking to catch beltfish and squid. The first day of the season is marked with a festival. Everyone in the village heads down to the docks to see the boats set off. At 12 noon, to much clamor, the boats all set out, a fleet to hunch fish stocks replenished in the off-season.
等了这么久啊，就是最后一天吧。等到最后一天就是有信心了。要问就是这出去半个月回来又卖几百万嘛。
Today, the boats use modern navigation methods and sonar to track them. There were no such luxuries 2,000 years ago, in the earliest days of Quanzhou. But even then, the locals were expert seafarers. Wars in the central plains of China drove many people to seek peace in the remote southeast, and conflict also spread. By the 10th century, a leader named Wang Shenzhi was first made military commissioner, then Prince of Min, a kingdom set up in what is now Fujian province. These incomers brought their own cultures with them, which can still be found here today. Folk tunes from the Central Plains have survived here for over 1,000 years. Wang Dahao has the title of National First-Class Performer at the Southern Music Inheritance Center. It's musicians like him who keep the ancient traditions alive.
南音的洞箫也叫尺八，这个尺八是唐代的历史，朝廷统一的一个管的内径跟它的长度1尺8寸。那么现在这个人叫尺八，就还有日本的尺八。日本的尺八是我们唐宋时期有僧人传过去日本的，现在已经是日本的国宝了。那么中国唯一叫尺八的只有在泉州。
By the time of Wang Shenzhi, the overland Silk Road had been the main connection to the West for 1,000 years. But it was becoming dangerous for traders.
这个我们都知道丝绸之路，它有个陆上丝绸之路啊。唐代之前，我们说基本上可以说这个大宗商品的出口是通过陆上行走的。唐代安史之乱之后啊，这个唐朝就衰落了，对这个陆上丝绸之路就失去了控制，因此呢，这个海上丝绸之路就逐渐发展起来了。
So traders turned to the sea. Quanzhou was about to come into its own. The new route to the west had been named after the land route it superseded. It is known as the Maritime Silk Road. But trade by sea had its own dangers, and there's plenty of evidence below the waves. In 1987, marine archaeologists made a once-in-a-lifetime discovery in the waters off Guangzhou. A near-complete shipwreck, the largest wreck of its kind, with a full cargo. They called it Nanhai 1, and it had been on the seafloor for 800 years. It took 20 years to raise the ship, and excavation work, freeing the cargo from silt, continues to this day. The ship was built in southern Fujian style, suggesting it hailed from Quanzhou, and it held as much cargo as would have been carried by 700 camels. Altogether, 180,000 pieces have been tallied to date. And although this is the largest such find to have been made, this was just a medium-sized ship in its day. One of the most special relics to have been taken from the mud is this gold armband. It's pure Silk Road, in that its imagery is Chinese, 2 dragons playing with pearls. But it wasn't made in China.
这种镶嵌工艺的风格的这种金器，是阿拉伯地区很早就有了，在公元前1世纪，在沙特地区就出土了。这个器物还有一个特点，就是在它的龙的颈部有一个呈三角形的一个用细密的点来组成的一个三角形的装饰。这种装饰在其他的器物上也同样出现，具体表现在用细密的金珠来焊接，然后这种装饰风格是阿拉伯地区的一种非常流行的风格。
The cargo of Nanhai 1 clearly shows how the maritime Silk Road was bringing cultures together. Styles and tastes were melding. Scientists have been able to calculate from the prevailing conditions that the ship had been sailing along China's coast for about a month before it foundered. Ships at that time were completely at the mercy of the elements. So, something had to be done to ensure their safety. Surprisingly, this happened over 15 kilometers inland on a mountain. Hu Jiaqi has been guardian of Mountain Jiuri for nearly 30 years. He knows many of the mountain's secrets.
这个地方九十山有闽南的第一大海神，叫通眼王。那他的史料记载是唐玄通公元的860，是闽南的第一大海上保护神。因为有了这个神，才有奇峰疑点，才有九十山的奇峰时刻。这方的时间是1183年。那当时闰月的11月，也就是少阳残余，就是闰11月24日， 郡守司马吉就是司马迁、司马光的后裔孙啊，同典中赵子韬提拔年少，统军韩进，以遣拨旗封以严服侍的。当年的旗封就是在宋代啊，它是官方的行为的，来保留着旗封啊，我们全中国啊只有93唯一。
Ancient shipping was completely dependent on wind strength and direction, so the intervention of the imperial court with the heavens was seen as essential. Quanzhou's location at the center of the southeastern coast meant it could send ships north or south, depending on the direction of the wind. It made it a popular port to use, with traders from the whole length of the maritime Silk Road coming here.
就是海上的这个丝绸之路的特征就是这个，当时来的各国来的，它有佛教，有这个伊斯兰教，还有摩尼教，本土的还有道教都融合在一起。
From the 7th century, in the Song Dynasty, Buddhism became a state religion for the whole of China. But even then, Quanzhou was slightly different. Cultures melded here. This city temple was built with representations of gods that didn't belong to Buddhism at all. Once a month, the Qinhua ceremony is held at the 7th century Kaiyuan Buddhist temple in Quanzhou. Qin sounds similar to a word meaning circling in the local language Hokkien. Pilgrims from many religions mingle with the Buddhist monks and circle the center of the temple, chanting scriptures. It's the largest regular religious event in the region. Tucked away in an arcade behind the main temple building are some stone pillars, salvaged from the ruins of another temple. These pillars are adorned with reliefs of the Hindu god Vishnu.
你看它那个世界文化遗产的话，各种文化都在上里边体现了，佛教的、摩尼教的，然后道教的，所有的大家都集中在一起，互不干扰，所以这个丝绸之路的特性在泉州体现的最为明显。
Somehow, two very different religions have come together in this Quanzhou temple, the only temple in the whole of China where Hindu imagery is to be found. Other world religions can also be found here in Quanzhou. Arab traders have been coming here since the 7th century, and many settled, importing their faith as well. Near to the Buddhist temple is Qingzhen Mosque, the oldest in all China. But further on, there's also a Confucian temple. There's a Christian church, and various other Buddhist and Taoist temples.
从大的范围来说吧，到了这个南宋末年和元代，福建地区的人口可能会在900万左右。从世界上来说，这个算是人口比较密集的。
This part of town has changed little over the last 1,300 years. The streets filled with terraced houses. In the 10th century, Governor Liu Tongxiao began a program of urban expansion to house the increasing population of Quanzhou.
刘从孝做了很大的成绩了，他把那个城市的范围扩大了将近7倍了。到了刘从孝之后，是陈洪进接着了。
14年当中，陈洪进一个人就向朝廷进贡了17万斤的香料，这些名贵的香料都是来自于东南亚的。那这些肯定是通过海上贸易和海上的运输而进入泉州。
这个时期就说明当时商船海外贸易还继续在发展，继续在进行。
Before it silted up, Quanzhou Bay was wide and open. This meant trading ships could sail in easily. But when it came to transporting goods inland, it was another matter.
我们站在的这个地方，这个洛阳桥这里是一条古道，这里叫做万安渡口。那山里的货物要运到省城去，都要从这里走，因为这条路比较近，要不然你就盘山去走山上的古道就比较远。那这边呢，渡口如果风浪很大的话呢，船经常会船翻人亡，很危险。
The roads had to traverse mountainous territory. This meant that the 12th and 13th centuries saw a surge in road building, with heavy stone bridges built in their dozens across creeks and crevasses. Wang Zhenzhen is a retired conservative, but even today she delights in going out to explore the ancient road network and study the ancient bridges.
快到了吧？古桥
到了，快到，
到了，
马上就到了啊！
这个桥板哦，这边这是你说的小桥，就在这里了。
啊，对，就在这边。
这个这条是断的，不要靠近。
没关系，没关系，它这个整条靠在里面的，这个还很长啊。
哇，它这座桥哈，建造的非常的讲究哎。哇，这个桥台做的很宽哦。那这样子，现在完整的上面看到的就是4条桥板呢。
The bridges are often all that is left of the roads, and they show the direction that the goods would have taken. Without these, the port of Quanzhou could not have functioned.
这样子1、2、3、4、5、6、7，呢它是8条桥板的，上游的这个斜坡啊，它是用从溪里面的鹅卵石来砌的这个坡，它这个本身可以泄洪。上次马甲那2条桥，你们就在你们隔壁镇嘛哈，它比较秀气，没你做的这么坚固。它那边2座是宋代的南宋的桥，它有碑记。那我们这个风格呢，跟它是差不多，所以我说啊，这个至少是明代以前的，就是宋明间的古桥。然后这个水就从上游一直下去，就流到我们的洛阳江了，汇到洛阳桥底下去了。
Quanzhou Bay is formed at the mouth of the Luoyang River. It's here that the finest bridge of all is to be found. A bridge once nearly 1,200 meters long that crosses the harbor, the very first sea bridge in China. It's made from over 300 massive blocks of stone, 10 meters long. They were lifted into place on rafts rising on the tides, along with many thousands of smaller stones used to complete the construction. The bridge had to withstand the onslaught both of tides and floods from the river, so the piers on which it stands are shaped like the hulls of ships to cut through the water. Oysters were also cultivated here. The cement that they produced to stick themselves to the stones underwater reinforced the bridge's construction. Just 731 meters of the bridge remains, slightly more than half. But it still connects both sides of the bay. Goods flowed in and out across this bridge, and so did ideas and culture.
宋元时代啊，我们泉州是世界大港，这些古桥连接着，像我们现在的网络一样，连通了内地跟沿海贸易的流通，整个社会经济的发展，朝廷也重视，社会也重视，所以这么多的古桥就形成了一个桥网，整个泉州地区。
The port of Quanzhou reached its peak in the 13th century. This was the era of the early European navigators, and it was at this time that an Italian merchant arrived, some 20 years before Marco Polo reached China. Or did he? 13th century, the city of Quanzhou in southeastern China was an important port on the maritime Silk Road. The story goes that an Italian trader, Jacob d'Ancona, arrived here in 1271 after a journey of over a year. He was astounded by this large, vibrant port filled with goods being traded. Spices, silk, porcelain, and other treasures, such as he had never seen before. D'Ancona supposedly stayed here for some months before continuing his journey. Once he arrived home, he wrote a book of notes running to 280 pages describing his travels. These notes remained hidden for over 700 years. That was until David Selborne, an Englishman living in Urbino in northern Italy, quite near the city of Ancona, Jacob's home, published a book which claims to be a translation of these notes.
The account of a merchant, an Italian merchant, going to China in the 13th century and describing what he saw and what he felt and what he bought and what he saw in the streets and his relationship with his servants as he traveled, the dangers, the success of reaching Zai Tun, his wonder at the city, which he saw as a great world in itself, full of foreigners, full of strangers, full of merchants, full of activity, full of strange things which he did not understand. This sense of adventure and surprise was the most beautiful thing about it, and the fact that he recorded it.
Zai Tun is of course the old navigator's name for Quanzhou, and the book gives a lively description of a busy, prosperous port. But Selborne has not revealed the original notes written by d'Ancona, nor where he found them. According to him, the owners do not wish to be identified.
There was a very big international debate about the book and whether it was authentic. Some Westerners said it was not. And when I am gone, after my death, maybe people will discover the truth. But I am committed in myself to saying nothing about its origins. The book must speak for itself. People must decide from the content whether it is true or false.
雅阁那个书啊，《光明之城》是吧？那本书呢，实际上现在史学界还有不同的看法，有争论的。我们假设这个雅阁这个人确有其人的话，这本书也确实是真书。那么我们说这个雅阁他所处的时代，大概是比这个马可波罗来中国大概要早个20-30年。
Undisputed is the fact that Venetian traveler Marco Polo published his own travels at the end of the 13th century. These too mention Zai Tun.
书里面有个名字叫刺桐，刺桐港。这个刺桐港呢，根据这个专家的考证啊，就认为这个刺桐港啊就是泉州。现在一般认为这个刺桐就是指泉州。
在马可波罗的眼中，当年的泉州港是世界上最繁华的港口之一。他曾经用一个数据来把泉州刺桐港和埃及的亚历山大港来进行对比，就说胡椒这种产品在泉州港口他看到的量，应该有埃及亚历山大港的100倍，夸张之余，你会觉得泉州的那种港口的繁华程度，给马可波罗所带来的震撼。
the exploration was not just one way. Chinese travelers also set out from Quanzhou and reported back on their findings. In 1339, Wang Dayuan returned from his second voyage and set down his travels in a book called Description of the Barbarians of the Isles.
中国走出去其实是有民间海商的力量，就是元末的时候有个汪大渊，那个汪大渊因为他是商人，他出去以后他留了《岛屿之恋》这本书，所以呢，汪大渊是一个先驱。
Wang ventured very far from his home, reaching as far afield as Persia, India, Sri Lanka, the Arabian Peninsula, Singapore, and even Australia. His account mentions over 200 places.
宋代呢，它的经济非常繁荣，消费呢，因为市场很大，所以呢，它的消费呢也非常旺盛，尤其是城市消费。可以这么说，北宋、南宋加起来320年，是中国古代社会经济文化发展的一个高峰时期。
可以想象，在宋元时期一个国际化大都市的一个景象，非常非常多的不同宗教的碑刻，大量的在这个时候出现，就是在这个碑刻不断的出现的过程当中，然后持续不断的这个研究过程当中，还原了充满了国际味道、多元文化、包容这样的一个城市。
One such cosmopolitan feature is this stone relief found in the city wall. The figure appears to be a Christian angel with its wings and its cross. But closer examination throws up some mysteries. The cross rises from a lotus flower, and the ribbons suggest Buddhist origins. And the cap and clouds are typical of Taoist imagery. What does this carving signify? The Quanzhou Maritime Museum is home to hundreds of stone carvings unearthed in the city. One of these caught the attention of a traveler in the early 20th century.
大概是在1914年左右吧，法国的著名学者伯希和把它发表在欧洲一本非常有影响力的一个杂志叫《通报》上面，然后就给它一个名称叫刺桐十字架，所以在西方就引起很大的反响。他们都没有想到，在中世纪中国东南这样的一个城市，会出现有这样子的富有这个地方特色又融合多种元素的这样的一个基督教碑刻。
Intriguingly, the Christian symbolism was mixed with other religions to be found in the China of the time.
这个碑刻非常典型的是基督教的碑刻，但是呢，它又融合多种宗教元素。它有那个道教的云彩，还有僧人的形象，然后头戴冠帽，手捧莲花，然后还有西方安琪儿的翅膀，中国飞天的飘带，它是相当特别的，非常独特的。
A large number of Christian carvings have been found in the foundations of the old city wall in Quanzhou. They have inscriptions in many languages, including Arabic, Persian, and even ancient Uyghur.
大量宗教石刻里面就可以看得出来，安德鲁佩鲁家的石刻在泉州发现，说在元代的时候，在此大堤过境内，那每一个宗教教派都可以按照自己的宗教独立的生活和传教，所以大量的商人在泉州定居，发展这个事业。公元的10到14世纪，泉州出现的这个经济的高度繁荣，海外贸易的高度发展，还有文化的多样性，这样的一个时期，我们也把它称为刺桐时代。
Many goods flowed along the maritime Silk Road. By the end of the 13th century, when the European travelers first arrived, there were already over 300 types of goods being traded here.
名贵香药在当时的中国，按我们现在话来说，就是最重要的奢侈品和畅销品。这些名贵的香药都是来自于东南亚各地，那这些肯定是通过海上贸易和海上的运输而进入泉州港的。
Yongchuan, near to Quanzhou, is still heavily involved in the spice business. Incense is produced here in large quantities. 80% of all the incense in China is made here, and 1 in every 3 incense sticks across Southeast Asia. Lin Wanseng's family has been making incense for generations.
打鼓这边呢是祖先传下来的，包括我爷爷啦、我弟弟啦、我2个弟弟都是做这个手工面香，大体都是一样，就是配方不一样，都有自己的秘方。
Different incense is required for different purposes. Sacrifices to the gods, respect for the ancestors, honoring ghosts. Each has to have a different form, size, or recipe. The bamboo incense from Yongchuan is upright, with the sticks made from local bamboo that has been growing for over 3 years. The incense itself includes bugleweed, Korean mint, tangerine peel, and rue. And each producer has its own secret ingredients too. Spices have formed an important part of life here in Quanzhou for many hundreds of years, both in trade and religious observance. In fact, they are closely bound together. It has long been the responsibility of one being to keep Chinese traders and seafarers safe: the goddess Mazu.